So, after less than 24 hours in Mallorca, we have weighed anchor and setting sail for Mallorca. Unfortunately, after we explored the east coast, the south coast and the west coast, trying to find a tenable anchorage, we were unsuccessful. We did find an anchorage on the west coast, but after a half an hour of dropping the anchor, the northeasterly winds turned northwesterly and the swell came in, so that became untenable as well. We're unable to explore the north coast because that has become a nature reserve as of this year and anchoring is prohibited. Additionally, we had all the weekend revelers coming into the anchorage that we were in, causing absolute mayhem, anchoring on top of everybody that was there, and we really didn't feel like dealing with that. The last matter of the day was we couldn't get ashore anyway. We need provisions. We haven't been to a supermarket since we left mainland Italy. The last supermarket we got to was in Napoli. We were able to pick up some fruit in Mallorca Island, and then again at the little campgrounds in Sardinia. Very slim pickings, but that sort of tided us over. But we're at the stage where we really do need to get some provisions. So we're saying adios to Mallorca, and thanks for nothing other than a good dose of desert sand that is all over Pawpaw, and we now have to clean after the winds last night. Just to give you an idea of the amount of dust and pollution that's in the air, we're not even 5 nautical miles out from Mallorca and you can hardly see the island. There's so much dust in the air. It's unbelievable actually. Try and go along and see if we can see any coastline. Barely as we come around. Just before 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is our first glimpse of Mallorca. As you can hear, the wind is still howling. The sea's very churned up. There's some boats anchored in one of the anchorages here in the distance. And we're continuing on. This is a huge bay. And we believe there's an anchorage behind one of the headlands down below here. So hopefully we can get anchored for the night. There's an anchorage in the distance, quite a few yachts in it. It looks nice and protected as well. And I'll come round, and there's another one. A few yachts are in there. But as I come round, this headland is here. The anchorage we're going to is behind that headland, so hopefully it's protected as well. And at last we find an anchorage. This is actually very scenic. Looks like every boat in the Balearics is actually here because there's nowhere else to go. But the scenery is just really quite stunning. It's shallow, we've got good holding, and we have all the amenities ashore that we need. Woohoo! By 1700 hours 30 we were anchored in Porto Piensa, and by 1800 we were dressed, had dinghied ashore, had tied the dinghy to the dinghy dock, and had picked a restaurant from the numerous restaurants lining the waterfront and the beach area to enjoy a well-earned, locally produced cold beverage and dinner, a seafood paella at the Marina Posters restaurant. Heaven at last. Since this was Roy's first visit to Spain, we decided to take a walk along the waterfront after our dinner. The other thing we didn't mention was the red desert sand that is all over the boat after being in the anchorage last night, the wind blowing, and it literally, Pawpaw is caked with dust. Come around this way, all over it's just everywhere. And it feels like there's so much dust in the air, it actually feels like it's landing on us. This is a major cleanup job. Thank you, Mallorca. After getting Pawpaw's exterior cleaned, having had a nap and dinner on board, we dinghied ashore again for a walk in the cooler evening air and enjoyed a gelato on the beachfront. Deciding to walk in the opposite direction to yesterday, we were surprised to see the golden sandy beaches stretch for miles, with numerous boutique hotels and fabulous private homes bordering it, as well as a lagoon nature reserve. The following day, after getting the inside of Pawpaw cleaned, but not before this aircraft frightened the wits out of us, given how close it landed to Pawpaw, we dinghied ashore again for lunch, this time enjoyed at Foss Urban Cafe and Bistro, in the coolness of their air-conditioned seating area, rather than outside on the patio in the baking heat. On Wednesday the 12th of July, as evening approached, we opted for dinner with a view at Dakota Tex-Mex, followed by another evening stroll, which took us along the Pine Walk, a very picturesque route, where we enjoyed a rest on one of the many benches to savour the seascape and view the interesting private homes on the northern end of the anchorage, stopping for a gelato on our return. The following day, after heading ashore, we strolled to the very pleasant town square, with its huge trees providing much needed shade, and enjoyed a coffee in the very welcoming, comfortable and cool indoor seating area of the cultural restaurant, a much quieter atmosphere than the beachfront. So today is the 14th of July. We've been in Mallorca for just over a week, and we're exploring further afield today. Taking the bus. We've come out of the Port de Piensa. We're more in the countryside now. Up into the mountains now. So this is the town of Palos St. Vincent, and we're going through here en route to Palencia. This northerly municipality in the Tramontana Mountains stands out for its coastline and geography, full of contrasts, from towering rugged mountains, valleys and plains, to magnificent cliffs, all of which enticed poets, painters and musicians during the early decades of the 20th century, including the painter Herman Anglada Camarasa, who lived in Palencia until his death. This small town dates back to the 12th century, when it was first settled by the Moors from North Africa. However, from local archaeological discoveries, it is believed that the area was initially inhabited as far back as 2000 BC and by the Romans in 123 BC. A short walk took us to the main square in the old quarters, where we found the Baroque-style parish church, Our Lady of Angels, and all the beautifully repurposed houses. So we've arrived in Palenza, and we found the main square. There's obviously some kind of preparations going on for celebration of some kind. There's work vans everywhere. As I come around, this is the cathedral, and it's such a pity because you can't get a good shot of it without all this clutter in the way. But we're going to go inside and have a look. The Moors were driven out by the forces loyal to King James I of Aragon during his occupation of the island in around 1230 AD, assisted by the loyal Aragon Knights, also known as the infamous Knights Templar. The loyalty of the Knights was rewarded when King James I gave them the town of Pienza. Many examples of their occupation can be seen around the town today, but their most significant contribution was the building of Our Lady of the Angels. While the Knights Templar left the island in the 14th century, the church was rebuilt in the current Baroque style in the 18th century, with around 15 very ornate, beautiful chapels within the building, and magnificent frescoes on the walls and ceilings. It was, however, the altar and the stained glass window to the rear of the church that was simply stunning. After a coffee in the town square in the shade of the trees, we wandered around the narrow, slate-paved streets, finding a few more iconic attractions as we strolled, including the fountain bearing a sculpture of a cockerel, the town symbol. Our final stop was the gardens of Joan March. Back in Porto Paenza, our day ended with a cold beverage on the waterfront, but getting soaked in the dinghy on our return to Paw after the wind shifted to the south, creating quite a fetch, was definitely not the best ending to our lovely day out. Today is Saturday the 15th of July, and we've taken another bus trip. This time we've come out to Cala de St. Vincent. It's a cove on the opposite side of the Formentor Peninsula to where we're anchored. It looks like a very pretty little town. We came through it by bus yesterday, we just briefly saw it, and we've come back today. The steps that go all the way up to the top of the road, and this is everybody out enjoying their beach day. I guess it's one way to stay cool with the heat, but I'm sure you're going to roast, quite honestly. We've come down along the waterfront, and this is the view. Very picturesque, and the old people snorkeling out on this rocky reef. I doubt they've seen anything because we don't see fish anywhere. After a snoop around, enjoying the beautiful seascapes with a kaleidoscope of clear blue water lapping the rocks, ancient ruins and the white sandy beach, we returned to street level and enjoyed a tasty meal, early enough to get a table on the balcony to enjoy our meal in the cool breeze. On July the 18th, we decided to hop on the bus to Solo, situated in the northwest region of Mallorca Island. Our specific destination, however, was the picturesque village of Fornalux, which required a connecting local bus service. Since we were heading back into and over the Tramontara Mountains, we were escaping the heat and enjoyed stunning scenery along the way, including lush woodlands, a beautiful lake, and the second highest peak on the island, all in the comfort of a rather luxurious air-conditioned coach, much nicer than we expected for local transportation. We also had the opportunity to see the vineyards of Mortiques from a distance, and had a brief stop in Santuari de Lux, a monastery and the most important pilgrimage site on Mallorca, founded in the 13th century, after a Moorish shepherd found a statue of the Virgin Mary on the site where the monastery was then erected. It is also known for the boys' choir, Els Bloiets, founded in 1531. Today, besides a botanical garden trail containing a small exposition on preserving the environment of the mountain region, a boarding school and a number of tourist-orientated facilities, a night walk from Palma to the sanctuary takes place every year during the first week in August. The cells of the former monks can also be rented by visitors.
Over that left.
18th of July, and we've decided to take another bus trip, this time a little further than we've gone previously, and we've come to the little town of Former Lux. We have no idea if that's been said correctly, probably not, but we've just got off the bus, second bus. We went into Solo for the first bus and then got the connection up here. Anyway, we're going to take a walk and see what it's all about. So we've got about a 250 meter walk down the hill to the center of town, and this is voted the prettiest town on the island of Mallorca, so we're about to find out. It was close to lunchtime by the time we arrived in the mountainous village of Former Lux, but it was well worth the wait. The entire village is built from the surrounding stone with red roof tiles, and most windows of the buildings have green painted wooden shutters. Not surprising that it is considered the prettiest village on the island. It was really beautiful. So we found the village plaza, the main square, and I'll just pan around. It is very pretty. There we go. I'm going to walk around before we settle on a restaurant, and it really is very picturesque. It looks like the whole town is built of the local stone. We returned to the village square, surrounded by cafes and a general store, to enjoy a very tasty lunch at a little restaurant called Can Bonet, after wandering the narrow streets. Built on different levels, many of the higher streets are pedestrianised and cobbled, with grassy paths leading off into the orchards and farms to the north. From our vantage point, we could see the orange and lemon orchards, as well as the olive groves higher up the mountainside, with some of the latter trees more than 1,000 years old. Against the side of the mountain, looks like they're cultivating olive trees, and it's very picturesque, set amongst the mountains. This village, set in the mountainous terrain, is considered one of the best examples of how to make optimum use of the natural landscape by building hillside terraces from the available stone and taking advantage of the woodland areas and available water supplies, coupled with the use of ancient growing techniques to harvest the olive trees and fruit orchards, all of which led to this area being declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2011. Afterwards, we made our way back to the bus stop for our return trip to Solo and to enjoy our next adventure, Mallorca's first and only electric tram to enjoy the sights of the Solo Valley, with its orange orchards on the way to Port de Solo. Getting to the tram station, though, was a rather interesting trek through the deserted back streets of Solo, passing the botanical gardens and eventually stumbling into the town centre. To add a bit more fun to the day, we're taking the tram down to Port de Solo. I know. Looks like the town square. Yeah. After arriving in Port de Soleil, unfortunately our timing was a little off and we missed our return bus ride back to Puerto de Prienza. But by only a few seconds, the bus was literally pulling away as we approached the bus stop, making for a rather hot, long wait for the next one, which got us back to Pawpaw well after 2100 hours, but not before whiling away a few hours on the waterfront of Port de Soleil and enjoying a cold beverage or two. Although we were both tired and hot by the time we got back to Pawpaw, it had been a wonderful day of exploring Mallorca Island. Switching on the air conditioners on board to cool ourselves down, as well as Pawpaw though, was a necessity before enjoying a cold shower and crawling into our beds. So today is Wednesday the 19th of July and we've come ashore early to actually get the bus to Palma, and we discovered there's a fresh produce market here on a Wednesday, and it's really brilliant. Produce looks delicious. So here's the rest of it. It looks like olives, cheese over there. So here's handbags and hats, always good to have. And it goes around, comes around to nice pretty dresses and jewelry in the corner. Very nice. This outing wasn't exactly a tourist one, but rather a search for yacht parts, something neither of us were going to miss when our sailing adventures were over. Getting parts and spares has been a constant challenge during our circumnavigation, and today was no exception. This was also a completely contrasting landscape to the beautiful green, lush surroundings of the Tramontara Mountains, which we thoroughly enjoyed yesterday. This was flat, dry and nondescript, although we did see evidence of agriculture and industry. Unfortunately, the company Roy had contacted to source the oil filters we needed had two different addresses, and as Murphy's Law would have it, we walked in the sweltering heat to the wrong one. When we eventually found the Yanmar outfit, we'd essentially walked back 2 stops on the train station. Thankfully though, after getting the oil filters, from there it was a short walk to the nearest underground station to return to the city centre, where we ventured above ground. So we got into Palma by by bus. Then we took the train out to the industrial area to find our oil filters and ended up walking for miles in the heat. And now we've come back to Palma and we've made our way up to street level. And it's very grubby, I have to say. So after getting to back to Palma via the underground train service, and having a cup of coffee and a pastry. We're heading back to Puerto Palencia, and this is the operation here with the bus terminal. It's actually quite a logistical issue. Very impressive for such a small island. Inclement weather over the next few days, we remained on board, but did get the opportunity to venture ashore briefly, first for a morning coffee and then for a dinner. By Saturday, the 22nd of July, the weather had cleared, and after an early morning walk, followed by a breakfast buffet on the patio of the Hotel Miramar, we took another bus trip, this time across the bay to Alcuvia, and what another lovely surprise this turned out to be. Specifically, we were heading to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the historic and well-preserved old town of Alcuvia, pedestrianised and encircled by its 14th century medieval walls, with narrow streets and century-old buildings dating back to the 13th century. This area has been inhabited since the Bronze Age, but it was the arrival of the Romans after they captured the island of Mallorca in 123 BC that founded the cities of Palma and Palencia. However, as Rome lost its position as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean, Palencia was abandoned and left in ruins, while the remaining population created a new town, Palencia. The remains of the ancient Roman city can be seen just outside the medieval walls. In 1298, a Moorish farmstead, known then by the Arabic name of Alcudia, and located very close to the ancient city of Palencia, was bought by King James II of Aragon, following which the new town Alcuvia was founded. While the building of the town was created in the same year, the construction of the wall was completed in 1362. Land was given up in 1302 by the King of Mallorca, James III, to build the present-day church, the Church of St. James of Alcuvia, a neo-Gothic style construction built into the town's restored medieval walls, and which also houses the Chapel of St. Chris, built between 1675 and 1697 to honour the saint. This chapel consists of a central dome and 4 side chapels, along with the altarpiece, which is a spectacular work of Baroque art. In the centre of the altarpiece is the image of St. James, the patron saint of Alcuvia. Today is the 24th of July. We've had just over 2 weeks of a nice little holiday in Puerto Palencia on the northern end of Mallorca, and today we've set sail, rather set motoring once again, down the western coast of Mallorca, and we are heading for the southern coast. It is flat seas, very light wind, but beautiful scenery. We've continued down the northwest coast of Mallorca, and as I pan around, fabulous scenery, but in the distance, I'll zoom in, this is one of the kayas, and definitely much bigger than what we saw in Menorca. But we're continuing on. You can see, I'll pan round, you can see the scenery. Really beautiful. As we come further down this coast, the landscape has continued to be absolutely stunning. We've seen a lot of kayas along the way, a lot of greenery, these towering mountains. Of course, the wind has also picked up, and it's on the nose from the south. When every single day we've been here, it's been wind from the northeast. Until now. As I zoom in, you'll see more houses and buildings. This is Port de Soleil that we visited by road a few days ago. We're not going to stop, we're continuing on. So here's a close-up of Port de Soleil. We've seen it from the ocean side now, or the seaside, should I say. Very nice, pretty bay. Looks well protected, but it was very, very busy. Here's a little town we're approaching. Looks stunning, set on top of the cliffs. Here's a close-up of the little town that we were talking about. Set on the top of the cliffs and up the mountainside. Towering mountains behind them. You can see the low clouds. You can't even see the top of the mountain now. So we turned the corner and we're now on the west coast. It's a lot drier than what we've seen as we've come along today, but still just stunning as well. There's a bay in there. It used to be a good anchorage apparently, but it's full of mooring holes now at some ridiculous price. As I come round, there's the headland here. The houses on top of it, the hotels or whatever they are. But very nice. We are continuing on. This is the other side of the headland. We've come around it, and this is what's on the other side. This is a vertical cliff. Definitely a few hundred meters high. And then coming round, there's the rest of it. Another settlement, town of some kind. And there's the next headland we're going to go round. We found an anchorage on the west coast. It is protected from the wind, but obviously not the swell. Not the most picturesque of anchorages, but it'll definitely suffice, especially for tonight. We're not sure about tomorrow. We'll see how things turn out, what the weather looks like. But there's quite a few boats here. We're not short of company. Come around. It's definitely not as green as we've seen. And we do have a super yacht for company too. Can't be all bad. Today is the 25th of July, and after a terrible night's sleep last night in Camp de Mar, we were up this morning and debated whether we continue on to Ibiza or try to find a better anchorage on Mallorca Island. On Mallorca Island. So we've done that. I'm not sure it's 100% better, but it's definitely better. And it seems like every boat on the south coast of Mallorca has tried to squeeze in here. This way around you'll see the other boats that are around us. We hope we found a good patch of sand and that we're dug in, but we'll soon find out. And the weather has been terrible, every direction possible, with a swell one direction, wind in another, and then all the speedboats and their wakes bouncing us around. Anyway, let's hope this turns out to be a better night. We'll soon find out. This was the forecast for the approaching weather that kept us in Mallorca before heading to Ibiza. So it's the evening of the 25th of July and we've come ashore just to get out of the rocking and rolling. Taken a long walk along the waterfront to stretch our legs. And seems beach volleyball is quite a big thing around here. These are teams playing against each other and we've seen it all along the beach. Before arriving in this anchorage at Palma Nova, as we rounded the south coast of Mallorca, the mayhem on the water intensified, with motor yachts at times 5 abreast, racing each other as they came screaming towards Pawpaw, while others raced each other from the rear. Throw in a few sailing yachts trying to tack up and down across our bow in basically no wind, and we were absolutely flabbergasted. We'd never seen anything like it and wondered how many boating accidents occur in these waters over the summer. After a second day of mayhem on the water and the slight southeasterly swell and light wind intensifying just before sunset, we were forced to weigh anchor and race over to the anchorage east of Palma Nova to tuck in behind Ilsa de Sa Torre, something we should have done sooner and saved ourselves a lot of unpleasantness and annoyance.